He stood in the center of the ring, breathing slow and heavy, a look in his eyes that made even the toughest men second-guess their confidence. The crowd wasn't just watching, they were holding their breath, waiting for the explosion. Across from him, a mountain of a man rocked on his heels, silent and patient, wearing the calm expression of someone who danced with danger before and lived to tell the tale. This wasn't just a fight, it was a collision of two eras, two worlds, and two men who redefined what it meant to survive inside a steel cage. Mike Tyson, the name alone sends a ripple through generations, not just for his devastating knockouts or the infamous moments burned into boxing history, but for the sheer unpredictability he brought into every arena he entered. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a storm. And now, years after his reign, after battles both public and private, the Iron Man of Brooklyn was stepping back into a new kind of battlefield. But this wasn't the Tyson of the 90s. This was a version sharpened by time, scared by life, and more dangerous than ever because he had nothing left to prove, only something to protect. Then there was Aleksei Oleinik, a name spoken with reverence in the MMA world and caution in locker rooms. The boa constrictor, not a nickname for show, but a living description of the man's approach. Patient, precise, relentless. A specialist in making chaos look like art, wrapping his opponents in the quiet panic of his signature chokeholds, squeezing until there was nothing left but silence. He wasn't a flashy star or a viral sensation. He was a grinder, a finisher, a veteran of countless wars who knew the language of pain and the art of stillness before the storm. What drew them together wasn't rivalry, it was something deeper. Curiosity, pride, legacy. In a world obsessed with age and prime, here were two men who understood that greatness doesn't operate on a schedule. Tyson, stepping into the world of mixed martial arts, not to prove he could, but because something inside him still burned. Oleinik, accepting the challenge not out of arrogance, but respect. Because when a legend knocks on your door, you don't ask why, you open it and see what's waiting on the other side. The night this bout was announced, forums lit up like wildfire. Some called it madness, others genius. Analysts were torn between Tyson's unmatched striking and Oleinik's suffocating grappling. The question swirled, could Tyson handle the ground game? Could Oleinik survive a clean shot? Would age be a factor, or would it be the fuel for one last ride? No one knew, and that was the beauty of it. The months leading up to the fight were anything but quiet. Tyson trained behind closed doors, surrounded by whispers of brutal sparring sessions and a focus sharper than anything seen in his earlier comeback exhibitions. He wasn't smiling for cameras or putting on a show. He was working, and Oleinik, he remained true to form, low profile, quietly dangerous, releasing just enough footage to remind the world that he hadn't lost a step, that the bow still had bite. Every time the promo aired, fans leaned forward, not for the usual trash talk or overhyped slogans, but because this fight meant something. Not just for combat sports, but for anyone who'd ever been told their time was up. Two legends, each carrying the weight a lifetime of battles, stepping into a cage not for fame or fortune, but for the purity of competition. The kind that strips everything down to instinct and willpower. In the final week, everything changed. Tyson, normally guarded in interviews, let a few words slip, something about redemption, about finally facing the kind of opponent that made him feel real again. Oleinik, when asked if he was worried about Tyson's fists, simply said, "I've faced harder, but never like this." It wasn't a boast. It was a warning. Fight night arrived with an electricity you could almost taste. The arena wasn't just packed. It felt like it was leaning forward, held together by anticipation. As the lights dimmed, the tension turned surgical. Every eye locked on the walkouts. Tyson emerged first. No robe, no theatrics. Just that stare. That cold, familiar stare that had rattled champions and broken contenders. Then came Oleinik, slow and steady, his expression unreadable, like he'd already run the fight 1,000 times in his head. When the cage door shut behind them, the silence was louder than any chant. This wasn't spectacle. It was something primal, something ancient. Tyson began to circle, testing range, his shoulders rolling like a predator stalking prey. Oleinik didn't flinch. He waited, timing every twitch, calculating every breath. For the first full minute, neither man committed. It was a chess match disguised as a brawl. Then came the moment. A sudden burst from Tyson. Left hook, followed by a right to the body, both landing with thuds that echoed off the walls. Oleinik absorbed them and closed the distance, hands reaching for a clinch, dragging the former heavyweight champ into his world. The crowd roared, half in excitement, half in fear. Tyson pushed off, creating space, but Oleinik was already on him, relentless, hands wrapping like vines, legs positioning for the trip. And just as the crowd braced for the takedown, Tyson spun free with a burst of raw power, the kind that defied age and logic. He wasn't just surviving, he was adapting. Oleinik smirked, ever so slightly. He had tested the water, felt the weight of the storm. But now, the real game would begin. Tyson wasn't going down easy, and Oleinik, he hadn't even started squeezing yet. As the horn sounded to end the first round, both men stood inches apart, neither backing down. Sweat dripped, chests heaved, but eyes stayed locked. There was no smile, no nod of respect, just a silent agreement that whatever came next would be far more brutal than what had just unfolded. And somewhere in that tension, in that unspoken promise between two warriors from different worlds, something shifted. Because the next round, that's where the war truly begins. The second round didn't begin. It erupted. Tyson launched forward before the horn's echo had fully faded, fists carving through the air like missiles, each one thrown with intent to end. The timing, the speed, none of it made sense. A man his age wasn't supposed to move like that. But Tyson wasn't playing by the rules of age or expectation anymore. He'd had snapped into something primal, like the switch had flipped mid-round, and whatever hesitation had been holding him back was now gone. Oleinik absorbed the pressure, but his eyes were blinking faster now. Not out of panic, he'd been through too much for that, but because Tyson was forcing him into terrain he rarely had to navigate, the edge of chaos. He clinched, survived, looked for angles. His hands fought for underhooks. His legs tried to manipulate position, but the grip he expected to soften over time only grew tighter. Tyson was digging in, his body leaning forward with the determination of a man who had come not just to compete, but to conquer. And then came the twist. Midway through the round, Oleinik did what no one saw coming. He pulled guard. Tyson, caught mid-motion, stumbled forward into the trap. The crowd gasped. A heavyweight striker willingly pulled into Oleinik's guard? It looked insane, but Oleinik wasn't crazy. He was a tactician. And now, he had Tyson in his world. Hips locked, arms baited, neck within reach. The boa constrictor had set the coil. But Tyson didn't freeze. He didn't panic. Instead, he planted both fists into Oleinik's chest and postured up with force. What followed was a series of strikes so sudden and violent that even the commentators faltered. Hammer fists, looping rights. Each one thudded off Oleinik's guard, but one grazed through, and that's all Tyson needed to create a sliver of doubt. Blood began to spill, not dramatic, but sharp enough to show that this wasn't just another grappling sequence. It was survival on both ends. Beneath the violence, though, something deeper was happening. Oleinik had expected Tyson to fade, most strikers do on the ground, but Tyson had been training for this moment. Not just physically, but mentally. This wasn't boxing. It was war. And he had committed to learning the terrain. Each elbow he threw wasn't wild. It was placed. Each time he postured up, he adjusted just enough to avoid the trap Oleinik was baiting. He wasn't just trying to escape. He was testing the ground fighter's limits. Oleinik, still dangerous from his back, shifted tactics. His legs slid up, looking for the triangle, disguising his real goal, the Ezekiel. It was a move few expected in MMA. A submission that often appeared out of nowhere, silent, subtle, lethal. And, for a split second, the setup looked clean. His forearm slipped under Tyson's chin, wrist folding over his own bicep. The cage crowd leaned in, hearts pounding, the submission artists on forums lighting up. Was this it? The twist ending nobody wanted but secretly feared. But Tyson did the unthinkable. With Oleinik's forearm creeping into place, Tyson surged upward with a burst of raw strength and lifted Oleinik off the mat. Not high, not dramatic, but just enough to slam his way out of the grip, breaking the leverage. Oleinik's legs scrambled, trying to reset, but Tyson was already moving, already past his guard, pressing his weight into side control. That moment flipped the narrative. Tyson, once viewed as the man stepping into unfamiliar waters, was now controlling the fight on the ground. It sent a shock through everyone watching. The balance had shifted. and with it came a ripple of doubt. If Tyson could survive the choke, escape the ground trap, and land damage from top position, what else could he do? In his corner, Oleinik's team barked instructions louder now, their usual calm replaced with urgency. They knew what few others realized: the window was closing. Tyson was adapting faster than expected. His body was slower than his prime, sure, but his mind, his instincts, sharper than anyone predicted. As the seconds ticked toward the end of the round, Tyson landed another elbow. Clean. Oleinik winced. Just slightly, but it was enough. The crowd saw it. The commentators felt it. The veteran grappler, who had crushed younger, stronger men in that same position, was losing control. And just as the bell rang, Tyson whispered something. No cameras caught it. No microphones picked it up. But Oleinik's reaction said everything. He didn't smile. He didn't nod. He just stared back, eyes narrowed, not in confusion, but in recognition. Something had changed. Tyson wasn't just surviving. He was evolving mid-fight. They walked to their corners without eye contact, both breathing heavy, both bruised. But while one corner scrambled with tape and advice, the other was silent. Tyson sitting still, focused, nodding as his coach spoke low and fast. Not a word wasted, just calm before a brewing third round. And yet no one, not even the analysts sitting cageside, had picked up on what Oleinik had whispered to his corner before the second ended. Something that could shift the direction of this fight in an instant. Something he had noticed, a habit, a pattern, a vulnerability in Tyson's ground movement that only a grappler of his experience can recognize. Whatever it was enough to make his team lean in. The question now wasn't just who would win, but whether either man could survive what came next. Because the third round wouldn't be about points or dominance. It would be about breaking something inside the other, and neither of them was willing to be that man. And in the crowd, someone watching from the front row stood up, phone in hand, not recording, not cheering, just staring at the cage, like they knew something the rest didn't. A former opponent, a future challenger, or someone pulling strings behind the scenes. A strange silence hung over the arena as the third round loomed. Not because the crowd had lost interest, far from it. Everyone watching, from the fans in the nosebleeds to the legends seated cageside, understood they were witnessing something rare. Not a brawl, not a spectacle, but a transformation. One man adapting in real time, the other calculating a trap he'd spent years perfecting. Oleinik hadn't returned to his corner defeated. He returned intrigued, and that made him even more dangerous. When the round began, Tyson didn't charge. He walked forward with purpose, gloves tight, chin tucked, body moving with the quiet confidence of a man who had finally become one with the cage. Oleinik mirrored him, slower now, breathing deeper, the gears in his head clearly turning. He had spotted something, some subtle rhythm in Tyson's transitions, a small but predictable habit when he moved to side control. That was the window, the trap door, and now it was just a matter of luring him into it. Tyson faked a jab and stepped in. Oleinik bit, ducking low, and in an instant Tyson sprawled, countering the takedown and reversing position, like he'd done it 1,000 times. The crowd lost it. The striker was out-grappling the submission artist. But Oleinik didn't panic, because the moment Tyson passed his guard again, the pattern repeated. Tyson planted his left knee high as he had before, posturing up with his right arm just wide enough to leave a gap. That was the bait. Oleinik exploded upward with a sweep that caught everyone off guard, even Tyson. It wasn't flashy. It was efficient, snapping him off balance and sending both fighters into a scramble. But this time, Oleinik wasn't going for a hold. He used the chaos to slide behind Tyson, snatching a rear body lock and dragging him to the mat. The arena flipped. Now he was in control. The boa constrictor coiled once more. With Tyson flattened out beneath him, Oleinik worked his way into position, one arm snaking under the chin. This wasn't just another submission attempt. This was the one. The move he'd set up for nearly 10 minutes of grueling war. He had the angle, the grip, the leverage. And Tyson? He was trapped. Seconds ticked like hours. Tyson's fingers clawed at Oleinik's wrist, legs kicking slightly, eyes wide. Not in fear, but in raw, unfiltered defiance. He wasn't tapping. His jaw clenched, breath shortening, veins bulging. The referee hovered, ready to stop it. Fans screamed from all sides. The commentators were shouting over each other. Then, just when it looked over, Tyson flipped. Not rolled, flipped. With a last surge of desperation and willpower, he twisted his body violently to the side, breaking the angle just enough to slide his shoulder out from under Oleinik's chest. It was a move that required perfect timing and unreal core strength, the kind most wouldn't even attempt. But Tyson pulled it off. The grip broke. Oleinik scrambled to hold on, but it was too late. Tyson was loose and on top. And this time, he didn't wait. He rained down punches with surgical precision. Not wild, not angry, just cold, calculated shots. Each one landing flush. Oleinik covered up, adjusted, tried to shrimp away. But Tyson followed, cutting angles like a seasoned grappler, pinning Oleinik against the fence. He postured again, raised his elbow, and dropped it straight into Oleinik's guard. 1, 2, then 3. The ref moved in closer. Oleinik's defense was still there, but his responses were slower now. The punishment was adding up. Another elbow opened the cut. Tyson leaned in, breathing heavy, eyes locked, then exploded with a final flurry that forced the stoppage. The ref dove in. The cage shook. The fight was over. Tyson had won, by TKO, in the third round, against a man who had submitted legends. But as the arena erupted and Tyson climbed the cage in celebration, the camera cut to Oleinik, sitting upright, blood dripping down his face, but smiling. Not the grin of a man who'd been humiliated, the smile of someone who'd seen something most never would. Because in that cage, he had tested a man many assumed was a relic, and what he found was a warrior still capable of evolving. In the post-fight interview, Tyson didn't gloat. He didn't shout or posture. He stood calm, nodding to Oleinik, and said something that sent chills through the arena. He almost had me. That choke was tight. I saw the light for a second, but something in me wouldn't let go. I've seen too much. I lost too much. I wasn't ready to leave just yet. The crowd roared, but what happened after the cameras faded was even more surreal. Backstage, as Tyson was getting stitched up, a tall figure approached. Not a coach, not a fighter on the card, but someone whose name hadn't been mentioned in years. Someone who had once shared the spotlight with Tyson during the golden age of heavyweight chaos. No cameras caught what was said. Just a quiet nod, a handshake, and a message passed. The next challenge had just been delivered. Tyson had survived the grappler. Now he was being called into something even stranger. The story didn't end with the win. It was only the beginning of a deeper return. One where Tyson wouldn't just face athletes from today, but ghosts from the past, and questions the fight world hadn't dared to ask in years. And as he walked out of the arena, bruised, bloodied, and smiling like a man reborn, fans were left with one undeniable truth. This wasn't a one-off. This was a warning.